Hello, everyone. Welcome to the English podcast. Today, we're taking a journey into this really powerful narrative. It explores, well, grief, responsibility, and these unexpected connections we build.
Yeah, not just physical bridges across valleys, but like
Yeah.
bridges between hearts.
Exactly. We've
Yeah,
got this rich story to work with. It's about a daughter and her father. They're separated by tragedy, but then brought back together by this cryptic message and a pretty challenging task.
a very challenging test.
So our mission today is to really unpack this moving tale. We want to understand the emotions, the silent burdens, and just the power of showing up, even when it feels impossible.
Hmm.
I think by the end of this deep dive, you'll get a fresh perspective on what connection and rebuilding truly mean.
And what's so fascinating, I think, is how the story uses the literal act of building a bridge as this powerful metaphor
Right.
for repairing relationships that seem totally broken. So we'll be digging into not just what happened, but why it resonates so much when you think about human connection and, well, forgiveness.
Okay, so let's get into it. Where does this story really kick off for Lena? We need to go back 5 years before the Maynard.
Right. That's when we meet her. She's this unique cartographer mapping forgotten places.
Yeah, like villages lost to time, roads buried in forests. The source paints her as someone who, strangely, never needed a mat, but always carried one.
She could chart these paths where none existed, but, and this is the key part, she couldn't find her way home.
That tells you a lot right there.
It really does.
Yeah.
And it sets up this deep personal conflict. Because her father, he was this legendary bridge builder, famous for his skill.
But their relationship, completely shattered. There was this tragic accident. Lena's younger brother, Kieran, died.
On one of her father's bridge projects, yeah.
Yeah.
Story tells us it was a faulty cable, a missed inspection.
An unforgivable oversight, at least in Lena's mind.
Exactly. And her grief wasn't just tears.
No, it was running. She blamed her father not just for the mistake itself,
But for what came next, or
Mm.
rather, what didn't come.
the silence. His crushing silence. He just disappeared into it. No apology, no explanation, nothing.
So she left, vowed never to return, threw herself into her work, these expeditions.
Hoping the mountains could bury her sadness, as the source puts it, which of course they can't.
Right. That detail about grief, riding in your backpack, whispering from the zippers. It's powerful.
Yeah,
It shows you can't outrun it.
it really does. And it raises that question, how do people cope with immense grief and blame?
Well, Lena's way, the running, the work, it's common, right? But maybe not sustainable.
And the father's silence. That's another way of coping, I
A
think.
very different way.
Ah.
But one that definitely compounds the pain for Lena.
Hmm.
So the chasm between them wasn't just the tragedy.
It was the silence that followed that made it deeper.
Absolutely.
So, okay, they're completely split. What brings her back after 5 years?
The letter. One morning, this mysterious letter arrives.
No stamp, no sender address.
Just 6 words. 6 haunting words.
Come back. Bridge on the cliff. The source says it hit her like an avalanche.
And you can see why. It's such a potent message. It's the inciting incident, pulling her right back into that unresolved past.
It's a riddle, really. Is it literal? A metaphor? A plea?
The brevity just screams urgency, doesn't it? Like,
Yeah.
there's so much unsaid packed into those few words.
And Lena, even though she vowed never to return, she goes. She packs her gear, heads north. Why do you think she obeys it so quickly?
That's a great point. Maybe deep down there's still a sliver of hope. Or maybe just a need for answers, an ending.
Could be. And as she travels, something really interesting happens. Everyone she meets seems to know where she's going.
Yeah, that's a fascinating detail. An old woman gives her bread saying, "It's been waiting for you."
And a shepherd just casually notes, he never stopped building.
It hints that their story isn't entirely private. You know, it's like the community feels the weight of this unresolved sorrow too.
And it also suggests the father hasn't been idle, despite his silence towards her.
Exactly. It foreshadows that he's been coping in his own way, through his work, even in his withdrawal.
And her journey becomes more than just physical miles, right? She's walking through memories.
Past the spot where she and Kieran raced pine cones, the bakery where her father bought her orange candy.
It's like the path itself is guiding her back, not just to the cliff, but maybe to herself, to that connection she lost.
Precisely. It's reminding her of the home she felt she couldn't find, but maybe, just maybe, could still rebuild.
So finally, she jutting out over this dizzying drop.
And beside it, her father, older, frailer, but it's him.
No surprise on his face, no smile. He just nods, gestures to the tools.
And says, "Help me finish it."
Oh, wow! I'm sorry, not let's talk. Just help me finish it.
And that request, asking for help instead of forgiveness, it's crucial, isn't it?
It completely changes the dynamic instantly. It's not about blame anymore.
No, it shifts to shared purpose. So they start working
Mm-hmm.
in silence.
And you can imagine how heavy that silence must have been at first, the past just screaming between every clang of stone and wood.
Oh, absolutely. Like a punishment, almost. But that shared silence, it's also a starting point.
Yeah, because eventually it starts to soften. They begin talking.
But carefully, right? First about practical things,
Yeah.
rope tension, wood
The
grain.
work itself, the task at hand.
And then, slowly, tentatively, they start talking about Kieran.
Lena admits she still talks to him, when she's scared.
And the father makes this heartbreaking confession. He hasn't stepped on a finished bridge in 5 years.
He says, I kept building them, but never crossed one. What does that tell you?
Oh, it speaks volumes about his own grief, his isolation, his guilt. He wasn't just silent to her.
He was trapped in his own silence, his own self-imposed exile from his life's work, in a way.
Exactly. And this quiet shared labor, it creates this space where they can actually be vulnerable.
Without a big confrontation.
Right. It shows that sometimes doing something together, working on a shared goal, opens doors that just talking can't.
And the source notes that moment when anger cools into ache.
That's it. That's the turning point.
Yeah.
They stop needing to blame.
And start needing to understand.
Which leads to that night, under the stars. The father finally says it.
Your brother wasn't my fault, but it was my responsibility.
Owning it, but clarifying the difference.
I couldn't face you. I thought you'd be better without me.
And Lena's response, it's just incredibly powerful.
I didn't need you to be perfect. I needed you to try.
Boom. There it is. The aha moment, right?
Totally.
That exchange lays it all bare. His burden of responsibility, her need for connection, for effort, not some impossible perfection.
And you finally understand the bridge wasn't just for the valley.
It was for them. It was always for them.
So the last day arrives. They set the final piece, a wooden plank right in the center.
And they carve 3 names into it.
Kieran, Lena, Arenda's name.
Yeah. And the source points out some things don't need words, just hands, presence.
Kieran, not as the wound anymore, but as a memory, part of them. Lena, the one who came back. Arvin, the builder, who stayed.
It's such a powerful symbol, that carving. It integrates the past, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It acknowledges everyone's part in the story.
Yeah.
Turns the pain into legacy.
It really marks that shift from being fractured to being whole again, recognizing each person's journey within the family story.
So the bridge is done. They stand there together, the wind whipping around them.
And on the other side, the story says there's nothing special, just forest, trail, and light.
Yeah, it drives home the point. It wasn't about the destination.
It was about what they built together to get there, the process, the connection made.
Lena takes the first step across. Her father follows.
And with every plank they cross, the story says years of silence just fall away.
Such a beautiful image.
It really is. The crossing is the reconciliation. It's moving forward to get... The world hasn't changed, but they have.
Right. Her internal world has shifted completely.
The journey, the shared effort to create that path. That was everything.
And when they reach the other side, Lena smiles. For the first time in 5 years, the story says.
And she asks, where to next?
His reply, wherever you want. Or maybe it was wherever you lead. Either way.
It signifies a new beginning, walking forward, side by side.
For the first time in years. It's a stunning illustration of how deep responsibility can lead to silence sometimes.
And how real reconciliation often starts not with the perfect words, the big apology.
But with showing up. With a shared effort. A willingness to try.
This deep dive into the bridge on the cliff, it really hammers home that the most important things we build, they aren't always physical, are they?
No, they're emotional. Bridges made of presence, vulnerability.
And just that willingness to show up, like you said, even when it's incredibly hard.
So this really makes you think, doesn't it, about the bridges in your own life? The ones that might need building or maybe rebuilding.
Yeah, what kinds of shared effort, maybe even starting in silence, could help span those gaps in your own relationships?
What unspoken needs could be met, not through finding the perfect words, but just through being there, through trying.
It makes you consider those times when maybe you're being asked to help build something,